Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Weekly Reads, where we give you 5 book recommendations all in one show. My name is Devon. I'm a librarian at the Worcester Public Library, just like my co-host Joy. Did you have a nice long weekend, Joy?
So busy. We had lots of mask-wearing, well-distanced company in very small groups. So it was very busy and a lot of fun.
It sure sounds it. Everything Joy and I are talking about today, you can get online through the Overdrive or Libby apps. Those are free. You can also access Overdrive through your browser on your laptop or desktop, and we're doing pickup of physical items. So if you want the print book or the book on CD, you can either request that online or call over the phone. And if you're not sure how to do any of that, you can call and we'll help you out. So now I'm going to switch screens so you can see what we have in store for you this week. All right, so as usual, I will be doing the fiction, Joy will do the nonfiction, and we have our coming soon title. For my first book, I chose one by Jojo Moyes. This one came out in 2014, about the same time as Me Before You, which was also by Moyes and was made into a movie. This particular book is a New York Times bestseller and a sweeping tale of love and loss. Part of the story takes place during World War I in France and part in modern-day London. So in Paris during World War I, Sophie must keep her family safe while her husband, the artist Eduard, fights at the front. When their town falls to the Germans, Sophie is forced to serve them at her hotel. From the moment the commandant sets eyes on her portrait, entitled The Girl You Left Behind and painted by her husband, an obsession is born. Almost a century later in London, Sophie's portrait hangs in the house of Liv Halston, a wedding gift from her husband before his sudden death. After she learns the portrait's worth, a battle begins over its history, and Liv's world is turned upside down. This book got starred reviews from Publishers Weekly and Library Journal. Entertainment Weekly said, "The author weaves a bittersweet tale in this irresistible novel, taking careful interest in the dark corners that exist within great love stories and the trickiness of simple, happy endings." And Kirkus said that Moyes is a born storyteller who makes it impossible not to care about her heroines. So it sounds like this book has some really strong female characters. I really like the division of time, how it has 2 different timelines. And everybody likes Jojo Moyes, so if you haven't read this one yet, you might want to pick it up. And here's one from Joy.
Well, my first choice for this week is Hollywood Park, a memoir by Michael Jolet. When 4-year-old Michael Jolet was taken from his bed in the dead of night and spirited away, it should have been a happy ending to a harrowing story. After all, the boy's kidnapper was his mother, and the place from which he was taken, a nursery/orphanage on the grounds of a cult called Synanon. Little did little Michael know that this episode would actually be the start of an adventure at least as harrowing as anything he had experienced on the inside. When former addict Chuck Diedrich founded Synanon in the late 1950s, it was the darling of what would become known as the recovery movement. Synanon had a proven track record of successfully treating what Diedrich called dope fiends through a combination of tough love, group therapy, and close-knit community. Soon the group began to attract idealistic non-addicts drawn to Synanon's mission and its charismatic leader. Over time, however, Diedrich became increasingly authoritarian, advocating violence, surrounding himself with a well-armed security force composed of grateful ex-addicts, and mandating that all male members have vasectomies and that any babies born into the group be turned over to communal nurseries at 6 months old. So, good thing his mother chose to leave and bring Michael and his brother with her, right? Well, yes. However, Mikkel's mother was a deeply depressed narcissist, totally incapable of raising healthy children in a stable, nurturing environment. Couple that with the fact that his estranged father, also a Synanon escapee, had been in jail for smuggling drugs. And we have what? A recipe for disaster. Not so much. From the get-go, Mikkel found people who saved him from what might have been an inevitable downward slide. There was the stepfather who taught him to fish, the stepmother who provided all of the consistent, unselfish love that his mother could not. And finally, his larger-than-life motorcycle riding, sports-loving, gambler father who stepped up to raise his boys and had Mikkel's back all the way to Princeton University and beyond. Instead of drugs, Mikkel found his passion in distance running, writing, academic achievement, and most of all, in the music of the performers he idolized, Morrissey, The Cure, David Bowie, and Lou Reed among them. Eventually, Mikkel formed his own band, Airborne Toxic Event, fell in love, married, and had a son. Mikkel's story could have been one of personal tragedy and despair. Instead, in Hollywood Park, he offers glimpses of redemption and hope. And by the way, I listened to Airborne Toxic Event. I love it.
That's awesome. I was going to say I need to listen to them. I'm glad it's good.
Strings, lyrical, wonderful lyrics, moody indie all the way. I love it.
I'll check that out later then.
Just a little plug for one of our authors.
All right, and here's my next fiction title. A Princess in Theory. So this is one of the romances I read a few weekends ago that I really enjoyed. This book came out in 2018. And if you don't know the author, Alyssa Cole, she is a romance writer known for bringing a lot of diversity into the genre. This is book 1 in the Reluctant Royal series, and Joy, Miss I Don't Like Romance. When it was published, it was selected as one of the New York Times 100 Notable Books of the Year.
Well, how disappointing.
So this is the story of a Cinderella in the city and her Prince Charming in disguise. Between grad school and multiple jobs, Naledi doesn't have time or patience for the constant emails claiming she's betrothed to an African prince. As a former foster kid who was almost but never adopted, she's learned the only things she can depend on are herself and science. Prince Thabiso is the sole heir to the throne of the Solo, shouldering the hopes of his parents and his people. At the top of their list is his marriage, and so he tracks down his missing betrothed, who disappeared as a child with her parents. When the lady meets Thabiso, she thinks he's her new trainee, and Thabiso, aka Jamal, decides to experience life without the burden of his crown. The chemistry between them is instant, and their friendship quickly evolves into passion. But when Thabiso's true identity is revealed, the fragile trust she'd given him is shattered. This book got a starred review from Kirkus, and was also a Romantic Times top pick. The Romantic Times book review said the book is attention-grabbing from page 1. A Princess in Theory is a delightful love story that introduces a princess with an attitude who readers will enjoy rooting for. And I totally agree. Naledi was my favorite character in this book. She's smart and tough, but because of her experience with foster care and her adoption falling through more than once, she has a lot of trust issues. Thabiso is both charming and supportive, and his patience with Naledi's stubbornness and fears was heartwarming. This is one of those books I wished would never end. I'm definitely going to pick up another Alyssa Cole book soon, and you should try one too.
I don't think so.
Well, you never know. Here's a book from Joy.
Well, faithful readers, I know that I promised you dinosaurs this week, but when I realized that yesterday was September 11th, I thought I wanted to highlight one of the many fine books pertaining to the terrorist attacks of 19 years ago instead. Do you remember when September 11th was just another date on the calendar? 9/11 merely a sequence of numbers to call in case of ordinary emergency? When the name Osama bin Laden was virtually unknown outside of the intelligence community? When it was inconceivable that a terrorist organization could, let alone would, hurl a commercial airliner into one of the tallest buildings on Earth? When the image of black smoke billowing from an enormous gash in the side of the North Tower had not yet been burned into our collective consciousness? When the US had not yet committed to seemingly endless conflict in the Middle East? If you say no to any of these questions, you obviously belong to the post-1911 generation. And for you, as well as for those of us who remember how we lived out that terrible day, as events unfolded hour by hour, The Only Plane in the Sky may be the book for you. In this sweeping panoramic narrative, author Garrett Graff artfully weaves a chorus of 500 disparate voices into a tapestry that captures all of the confusion, shock, fear, rage, love, heartbreak, and courage that Americans experienced at a time before anybody, from the President of the United States on down, knew exactly what had happened or what was going to happen next. Graff draws on transcripts, declassified documents, original interviews, and oral histories from first responders, victims, survivors, witnesses, and family members to, quote, paint the most vivid and human portrait of the September 11 attacks yet, end quote. Much of Graff's focus is on events that transpired above the earth, in those clear blue September skies so many of us recall. There is the astronaut who, as the only American off the planet at the time, watches a plume of smoke hover over Manhattan. There are the air traffic controllers who, in a sequence of garbled transmissions, struggle to grasp the ungraspable. There are fighter pilots who grapple with the potential necessity of shooting down a hijacked plane. There are the heroes of Flight 93 who bravely fight back, and the unsung heroes of the aviation industry who pull off the unimaginable feat of bringing all air traffic to a halt in a matter of hours, until the only plane left in those eerily empty and silent skies is Air Force One in search of refuge. As the momentum of this excruciating, skillfully paced work moves us inexorably forward, we can't help but wish to be carried to a different ending. This time, just this once. Of course, we don't get that alternative ending. Instead, we are given powerful and poignant testimony to the courage and resilience of the human spirit in the face of sorrow, unprecedented challenge, and adversity.
I've heard this book is excellent, but I think I might get too emotional if I started reading this one.
I think that may be true of many.
Yeah. All right, and here is our coming soon title. A lot of people like Jodi Picoult, and she has a new book coming out on September 22nd, which is a Tuesday. There is a record for it in our catalog for the print version if you want to get your name on the waiting list. And I expect that eventually it will also show up on Overdrive and Libby. It's already an Amazon Best Book for September this month, and it's being called a multifaceted high concept work. I should preface this by saying I did not purposefully choose a book that's about a plane crash for the coming soon title. It just sort of happened that way because I thought people would want to know about Jodi Picoult's new title. So the main character is Dawn, and for her, everything changes in one moment. She's on a plane when the flight attendant announces to prepare for a crash landing. She braces herself as thoughts flash through her mind, but the thoughts are not of her husband, they're of Wyatt, a man that she saw 15 years ago. Dawn survives the crash, but so do her doubts. She has a good life. There's her husband, Brian, their daughter, and her work. But somewhere in Egypt is Wyatt, who works as an archaeologist, a career that Dawn once studied for, but had to abandon. Now, when it seems that fate is offering a second chance, she's not as sure of the one that she made. After the crash landing, the airline has survivors seen by a doctor and then offers transportation to wherever they want to go. The obvious choice is home, but she could return to the archaeological site she left years ago. As her story unfolds, Dawn's two futures are shown simultaneously in alternating chapters. So the Amazon Best Book of the Month review said, "This book is a provocative exploration into monumental questions about the life we are living, who we want to be with when we die, and whether it's possible and acceptable to change our mind, return to the trailhead, and go another way." So I think that's a really interesting premise. You know, what if we'd made a different choice in the past? And then it sounds like in alternating chapters, these two storylines of the main character play out. So again, this book is coming out on the 22nd if you're interested. But that brings us to the end of our episode today. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget, if you're looking for a recommendation or you want a read-alike for your favorite author, you can just put that in the comments below and Joy and I will see what we can do. Otherwise, hope to see you next time.
See you later, fellow readers.